proves better outcomes for the communities that we serve. And so I think that's just very important as we take a step back. I think what we're building together is the launch of this larger ecosystem and one that ultimately supports real-time interoperability between EMS and the healthcare system. We want to strengthen statewide analytics and system visibility, enable faster decision making during disasters and large scale incidents, and create a more connected experience for our local EMS agencies as well as our EMS provider. So EMSFlow absolutely aligns with our broader transformation work happening across EMSA, whether it's standing up the Pulse Registry, modernizing our licensing system, or now this. I think this reform is absolutely key as we think about the strategy for EMS technology statewide. I want to acknowledge as I kind of come to a close here and why I wanted to give opening comments that change at this scale and what we've experienced really in the last 3 test cases and kind of this final test case really requires a lot of partnership. It's not something that we can do alone. The success of this effort absolutely depends on the collaboration between us, the LEMSAs, our EMS providers, all of the technical teams out there, the vendors. We know that, and we know from the pilot phase of this project that working together, being transparent, getting on the phone, making phone calls, that we can make things happen really, really quickly. And so as we move forward, I just want to, as always, say that my door is always open and I will be actively engaging throughout this process. And I really believe that this final kind of puzzle piece locking into place with the EMSA architecture is really going to create the digital backbone for the future of EMS, for the future generation, something that we can truly build on, from being able to have your paramedic card in your Apple Wallet to being able to pull down real-time analytics in a way that is helpful for decision making in real time, things that we can give you, tools that we can give you. So I just want to say thank you, not only for being here today, but also in advance for your continued partnership of what I know will be a very intense 90 days. But at the end of this, I think we'll all be better for it. And I think as we think about the next generation, always wanting to leave them, something great that they can build a foundation on. So thank you all again. With that, I'm going to turn it over, I believe, and Arslyn can correct me if I'm wrong, to the EMSA program team, who may review the first couple slides. If not, then I'm going to hand it back to Arslyn.
Yeah, I can. I was going to go through the just overview of the call, and then I was going to kick it over to Cameron here. But just want to say thank you, Liz. That was very well said, and there's a lot of coordination here that's going to happen, and so we look forward to partnering with the LEMSs, the vendors, and everyone in between. And so to kick things off here, I just realized I didn't introduce myself formally. My name is Arslan Rafiq. I am one of the program managers on the EMSFlow. I just realized that I am on mute. Is that correct? Can you guys hear me now?
We can hear you.
Okay. Just wanted to say thank you, Liz. I think to echo your points, there's a lot of partnership across the board that's required, and this only works when we're all in sync. So I realized I also didn't introduce myself to start the call. My name is Arslan Rafiq. I'm one of the program managers on the EMSFlow program representing Cloudwick, and myself and Cameron will be guiding you through the webinar today. And so to get things started, here's what we'll be covering. And so we'll start off with backgrounds and objectives, the context behind this migration. Then we'll get into the wave schedule. So you can find your wave that corresponds to your LEMSA. From there, we'll get into the migration approach, the dual pipeline model, the submission model decision your agency needs to make. We'll cover the communication touch points. That includes the wave readiness calls and the daily stand-ups, followed by roles and responsibilities and data validation. And finally, we'll go ahead and close with some lessons learned from the pilot and specific next steps for your LEMSA and vendors. A quick housekeeping item, though. I realize that we want to go ahead and save questions to the very end. We've added a Q&A box here in the call. Something for you guys to reference. Drop anything that comes up to mind as we go through the webinar, and we'll come back at the end in the Q&A section to address all those questions that you may have. And so with that being said, I'll go ahead and hand it over here to my EMSFlow colleague, Cameron, who will talk through the background and objective section.
Thanks, Arslan. Good afternoon, everyone. I know quite a few people on this call, but not everybody, and so I'll introduce myself. My name is Cameron Ali. I'm the Division Chief of the Quality and Planning Division here at EMSA. And so I guess I sort of kind of get the easiest part here is that I'm going to walk through the first couple of slides before we get into the real technical stuff. And so the first section we're going to go over are the background and objectives and what that kind of means. So we can go to the next slide. Thank you. So EMSFlow is California's new EMS data platform. And so EMSFlow is going to be replacing our current KEMSA system. And it's going to, kind of work in a similar way to the current system where it's going to be NEMSIS compliant. It's going to have demographic data submitted by LEMSAs and providers across the state. Following the pilot phase, which we're going through right now, which includes Sierra Sacramento Valley, Alameda County, Santa Clara County, and also most recently, Napa County has also sort of been folded into our pilot. So big thanks for that. And again, I want to give a big thanks to the administrators, to John Poland, William McClurg, Nick Clay, and Sean Vincent for their participation in the pilot process, because this is really allowing us an opportunity to fine tune things and learn about the process before we kind of move into the waves, which we'll get into in a minute. And so as you can see at the bottom of the slide too, we're looking at sort of the deadlines. And so we want to have the entire migration done by August 29th, and then have the cutoff period be on August 30th. So those are the deadlines, and something that, again, the readiness calls, all those types of things are going to be really key for us to all be able to reach those deadlines. Go to the next slide. Okay, and so I'm just going to go over the migration objectives. And again, so the idea is to migrate every single LEMSA and their providers and their vendors over to the new EMSFlow environment. And again, this will be done through a phased process. Another aspect of it too is establishing a DEM baseline for the DEM files or demographic files. And the good news is, and we'll go into it a little bit more later in the presentation, but the good news is that we are able to get the DEM files prior to each of the waves. And so that should help mitigate some of the work on the LEMSA's end to provide those. And again, there might be some issues, or if there are any gaps, we'll address those as they come up. But that's something that we also learned during the pilot period. Another sort of objective is to validate all of the data, right? To make sure that everything is coming in is going to the right place and is working correctly within EMSFlow. Then obviously the last objective is to make sure that this is a seamless transition, right? We're not looking to disrupt any kind of ongoing EMS data submissions. And that was really key for us because, as kind of like Liz mentioned, the work that we do, the data is incredibly important. And so we don't want any period of time where maybe we can't access it or we can't use that in our decision making. Okay, and so now I'm going to go into the wave schedules a little bit. And so as we go to the next slide, you'll get an opportunity to see, I guess it's the next one too, but we can stay here for just a minute. You can see right now we're kind of in the pilot phase as well, including the LEMSAs that I just mentioned. And then it moves on from there. So there's sort of 6 waves in total. And so as we go to the next slide here, you'll see, the LEMSAs and then which waves and their dates. And this is something that was in the letter that we sent out, I believe, a couple of months ago. And then we're also going to be sending out the slides, I believe, by the end of the day tomorrow. So there's no need to rush and write down when your migration window is. And again, so the idea behind the waves too, there were a couple of different factors. It depended on maybe they're a multi-county LEMSA, maybe they are a LEMSA that doesn't have its own repository. Those are just some of the factors that went into deciding where certain LEMSAs were within the different waves. If you go to the next slide, you'll see where the final waves are. Yep. And now again, all of it, the sort of migration ideas to have it be done by August 29th. And yeah, so now I'm going to turn it back over to Arslan, who's going to get more into the weeds about the migration approach, the dual pipelines, and kind of the more of the technical aspects of it. So Arslan, I'll hand it back over to you.
Awesome. Thanks, Cameron. So now we want to go ahead and talk about how the migration actually works. So this section is going to cover the approach, the 4 phases, and what a unified cutover means in actual practice here. So moving over, we will talk, the full dual pipeline migration. So the core of our migration approach is a full dual pipeline. So during your migration wave window, data flows to both systems at the same time, to EMSFlow in production, in our production environment, and to the current vendor system in parallel. Nothing about your existing system or submissions will change. It stays completely intact, so no need to worry on that side. This dual pipeline model is a default though, and so the majority of our partner vendors should be able to support it from the moment we connect to the cutover on August 30th. And we listed them out. We listed out the partner vendors here. That includes ImageTrend, ESO, Zoll, Water, IPCR, TraumaSoft, and so forth here. For the vendors that cannot technically support a secondary destination, we do have a defined exception process. Those agencies will proceed in this case via a direct cutover to EMSFlow only, with in this case us extensively monitoring those submissions that are coming in. So we asked if you think that your vendor may fall in this category, we ask that you go ahead and flag it early and reach out to us just so that we're able to stay on top of it. But overall, the bottom line here is that your data keeps flowing to where it flows today. We just go ahead and add on EMSFlow as a parallel destination so we can validate it without any risk. And so I'm going to go ahead and move over to our next slide here, from preparation to cutover. So the migration of each LEMSA moves through 4 phases here that we've outlined. So phase 1 is a pre-migration prep. About 1 or 2 weeks before your window opens, we will schedule your wave readiness calls, and we'll get into what that is. But in this prep, we'll also confirm your technical point of contacts, your vendor point of contacts, and validate that provider inventory matrix that you have for your LEMSA. So that's phase 1. Phase 2 is a dual pipeline data submission. That's your active migration window. Live data goes to both, in this case, EMSFlow, as I mentioned, and the current vendor system at the same time. Our team monitors, validates, and resolves issues with daily stand-up calls being required throughout the duration of your migration wave window. So that's phase 2 there. Now, phase 3 is the validation and sign-off. So in this case, we compare outputs against the current vendor system. But if we cannot, for whatever reason, complete a comparison with the current system, this is when we will reach out straight to the source here, which is the LEMSAs with the providers, and work with you to complete a comparison or any form of validation that we can do. And so then between 3 and 4 is when we have our formal go, no go determination based on kind of the prior phases. And this brings us into phase 4, then our production cutover and discontinuation of that we have on August 30th. So endpoints route exclusively to EMSFlow after August 30th. The parallel feed to the current system vendor is discontinued, and our team will complete post cutover verification alongside your LEMSA here. So that covers the 4 sections here. It's worth noting here that this will be the same for every LEMSA regardless of the wave. And so now we get into a little bit more of the technical side of things. So the submission model. So there's currently 2 ways that data gets submitted to EMSFlow, and they kind of mirror the same way that data gets submitted to ChemSys today. So kind of walking through the option A first. Option A is the aggregated submission. Providers submit EMSA data to the LEMSA, and the LEMSA then submits to EMSFlow on their behalf through a single integration endpoint. The LEMSA technical point of contacts or their vendor here are responsible for handling this configuration. And then option B is a multiple pipeline pathway here. So individual providers or their vendors submit EMS data directly to their LEMSA repository, and then that gets sent to EMSFlow through multiple pipelines In this case, each provider gets their own credentials and endpoint configuration to get their pipeline running to the state. So as a part of this migration, we'll need to confirm your current submission model, and we'll have the opportunity, you also have the opportunity here to move to a preferred submission model in this migration wave. And I'll get into it in our next slide here. But before I do that, I do want to kind of call out the final point that we have here at the very bottom around the DEM file aggregation not required by LEMSA. So Cameron called this out a little bit earlier, but currently the EMSFlow team will handle DEM file submissions for all your providers by downloading existing 3.50, 3.5.1 DEM files from the current vendor system. Your LEMSA here does not need to worry about collecting or manually submitting DEM files to the EMSFlow team. However, if we do encounter any issues or find any gaps in preloading the data, we'll go ahead and reach out to you, to your LEMSA, just to make sure that we can get your help in getting the latest files, just to make sure that your LEMSA has all the data required here for your providers. And so our goal is to try to go ahead and get that done before your migration wave. So a little bit of coordination here before things start. And so now this brings me to the integration account alert. So I want to give you guys some context here into the opportunity to update the your submission model. So currently as it stands, we have approximately 600 active direct pipelines currently submitting to ChemSys. It's become clear to us that most LEMSAs here are not aggregating, but instead are running a kind of complex model with the multiple pipelines set up. So this migration to a new system here, EMSFlow, provides you with a unique opportunity to either carry that kind of complexity forward or simplify it here via aggregation. So the choice is ultimately yours to make, but there are a couple things that we want you to go ahead and consider before coming to a decision by the wave readiness call that we will schedule with each one of you. So let me actually break this slide down with the two options that we have. So on the left-hand side, we have the option A, the aggregated LEMSA path. And this option ultimately simplifies credential management. That's number one. Allows you to leverage your local repository, and then gives you full visibility on all like the submissions coming in from your providers. But the trade-offs here are that if you don't kind of currently aggregate, it does require a workflow change upfront that needs to be scoped and communicated to your providers and vendors here before your migration window opens. Also, one thing that we're calling out is that issue resolution, if it's not already kind of done through you, will run exclusively now through the LEMSA. So you would be bearing a little bit more responsibility here. And so that's option A. Now, option B is leaving things as is or the multiple pipeline path. This option here offers ultimately continuity. So your providers here largely keep doing what they do today, just pointed at new endpoints, multiple new endpoints. So for LEMSAs with multiple pipelines, this reduces disruptions at the provider level. The cons here, however, is that each provider will need their own credentials and configuration. So this will require a heavy coordination and reliance with your partner vendor to get these pipelines up and running. So it's, as you know, like more pipelines here just introduce a little bit more risk, especially when we have a short window to work with. So we're going to have to be, again, very efficient with the credentials being provisioned, shared, and pipelines configured during your migration wave. And so that covers the two options, but honestly, our recommendation is here, is if you have the capacity to aggregate, we recommend you to use this migration as the opportunity to go with option A. And the reason why is because we believe it'll be a smoother migration window for you, a cleaner model once we're live, and then you'll have more visibility over your provider data. And so our kind of, again, recommendation is option A. Both pathways will be fully supported. We'll spend time with you during your wave readiness calls to kind of talk through your current setup and land on the right decision, but it ultimately does come down to you, the LEMSAs, to make that choice. I want to go ahead and pause here. I know that there's a lot that we covered, and And I want to look to the EMSA EMSFlow program team here. Is there anything that we are missing on calling out here for this section?
Sorry, not that I can think of. I think you did a good job covering all of the different, the two different options.
Great. All right. We can also answer some questions that the audience has here at the very end around this. Happy to open up the floor when we get to that section. Okay, so now the communication approach. So we have two recurring touch points that will define how we stay in sync with the LEMSAs and vendors through this migration. So kind of getting into touch point number one is the wave readiness calls that I've been talking about. So this is scheduled approximately 1 or 2 weeks before your migration window opens. It's going to be the formal kickoff for your agency migration. And the agenda here covers a few things. So reviewing your specific migration timeline and process, walking through your current integration configuration and provider vendor matrix, confirming your submission model. So this is a time where we will go ahead and define that and move forward with it. Checking in on the DEM file preloading status. If we have any issues, we'll go ahead and let you even know before this call, but if we'll go ahead and give you a status at this point. Discussing how we'll go ahead and distribute the EMSFlow production credentials and integration specs, and working with you through any agency-specific considerations that we should have. So we expect and require both the technical point of contact and your vendor representative to be on this call, especially if the vendor point of contact is the one responsible for updating your integration configuration. So that's the touch point number one. Now, touch point number two is a daily wave stand-up. So these happen every day during your respective migration window. We will use these calls to confirm the integration connectivity, address any data issues as it's flowing into the EMSFlow system, and just handle or request any resubmissions during the call. And so again, this is also a call that we require your technical point of contact and vendor to be present on. And then at the very bottom, I have a note here, kind of calling out the our offline kind of approach, where we want to go ahead and if we don't address anything via our two touch points, we'll go ahead and send emails to go ahead and escalate things appropriately, coordinate, or just track any issues as we move forward. And so now we'll get into some roles and responsibilities and the data validation section of things. So the big question is who does what across this migration, right? And so this chart breaks down the different activities and the different kind of audiences that we have here on the call. So I'm going to go ahead and kind of go down by our team first, and then the LEMSAs and the vendors. So to kick things off with the EMSFlow team, we will go ahead and lead the wave readiness calls and scheduling them, host and facilitate the daily stand-ups, and distribute the production credentials, handle the DEM file like preloading into the system, and lead all monitoring, validation, error triaging of the system as we receive submissions. And then at the very end, we will also, alongside the LEMSAs, go forward with the go, no-go determination. So that's our responsibilities. Now, the LEMSA's responsibilities are a little bit of also leading and coordination focus. So attending those readiness calls and daily stand-ups, providing any requested or missing DEM files that we ask of you, receiving and distributing credentials here as applicable, implementing or coordinating the dual pipeline integration with your vendor. Again, if your LEMSA has a technical point of contact, that's great. Then essentially you're collaborating with your vendor. But if you don't, then this is where you have to make sure that your vendor is leading the way here in the dual pipeline integration. But coming back to your points, to the responsibilities of the LEMSAs, you'll also be confirming your submission model and verifying alongside us that data continuity exists post cutover. And so that covers the LEMSAs. Now onto the vendors. Vendors in this case handle the implementation side of things. So the dual pipeline configuration, endpoint updates at cutover, data resubmissions when requested or on the vendor, and they will need to just be kind of engaged throughout the process here and made available throughout our various touch points. So that covers our roles and responsibilities here. The next section we wanted to also give some insight on was our data validation approach. So just to kind of give some confidence into the system and how we're approaching this. So data validation happens essentially in 3 layers by our team, with some support if requested on layer 2. But layer 1 is the internal validation. This is where input versus reconstructed output comparison happens, and we verify that things have been mapped accurately as data is moving to the EMSFlow pipeline. And so this is kind of fully on us internally. No action is going to be required from your LEMSAs. But now as we get into layer 2, this is where there may be some involvement. So this is where we compare outputs against the current system. But again, if we cannot, for whatever reason, complete a comparison with the current system, this is where we'll go straight to the source for validation, which requires your LEMSA to just interact and provide data to us. And what we mean by this is, for example, we are doing comparisons with record counts and data completeness, where we ask for a defined period of time for us to review and compare submissions. That's just like a example top of mind here. And so that's layer number 2. Now, layer number 3 is the standards and business rule enforcement. So we will go ahead and review the schematron files and make sure that we are triggering the right warnings and errors with each submission. So if issues are found with unexpected warnings or errors, this is when we will go ahead and triage them and then communicate any required actions that your LEMSA or your vendor needs to take. So that touched on data validation there. Just again, wanted to give some insight and transparency into our approach there. And so now we get into some of the lessons learned, and kind of we frame this as in lessons learned and like keys to a successful migration. So number 1 is the start vendor conversations early. So vendor readiness to us is, with the amount of partnership that needs to happen, vendor readiness is the single biggest variable in our migration timeline. So integration configuration, endpoint updates, resubmissions, all of it depends on vendor responsiveness. So we ask that you go ahead, and I know we have a couple of vendors here on the call, but we ask that the LEMSAs go ahead and contact your vendor early and not wait until the readiness calls. We want to go ahead and make sure that we can address any vendor issues and any scheduling conflicts that may arise. So that's number 1. Number 2 is attend the dedicated session. So I know we're kind of reinforcing this as well, but the wave readiness calls and daily stand-ups exist for us to keep the migration on track. So the request here is to bring your vendor and then show up with the right information, especially for resolving any issues. Now, the next one is number 3. So that's the commit to the next business day resolution. And so up front, I know that this may be hard to commit to, but the migration windows are again short here. And to a certain extent, we do anticipate and expect some mapping errors or even some vendor connectivity issues. So any of these can extend the dual pipeline period and put your cutover at risk. So we go ahead and are asking that your point of contact be reachable and responsive throughout your designated window. And finally, we have the confirmed submissions, submission information before your window. So we have a couple of pieces of data that we need from you prior to your window starting. And so the sooner we can get that, the better our migration start will be here. All right, so kind of what happens, and I know we're almost kind of at the end here. What happens next after this webinar? So there's kind of 2 tracks here, our track on the EMSFlow program team and your track on the LEMSA side and the pre-migration checklist. So from our side, we'll distribute this webinar presentation and the recording to the participating LEMSAs. And one of the other big things that we'll go ahead and do is send a template. And this template is meant for us to collect a few things: your technical point of contacts, vendor point of contacts, active providers, submission vendors, and the current submission model that you have. And so we don't have it to show right now, but we'll go ahead and actually send it out tomorrow, by tomorrow end of day. And so that's number 2 here. We'll then go ahead and schedule the wave readiness calls. It's kind of dependent on the point of contacts that you send, so we'll need to go ahead and wait till May 22nd to get that information. But we'll schedule the wave readiness calls, the daily wave stand-ups. And then for number 5 is kind of alluding to the preloading that work that we have to go ahead and do of the DEM files. But again, making sure that that is intact before the migration wave for your designated LEMSA. Now on your side. So from your side, this is kind of the single most important thing you can do right now is fill out that template when we send it tomorrow and return it to us by no later than May 22nd. And so again, that means the primary LEMSA point of contacts, your active provider list, submission vendor for each provider, and the current submission model. The second here is the kind of coordination with your vendor. So telling them about the migration window, especially if they're not here on the call today, telling them what's coming up, and the sooner that conversation starts, the better position you will be. Now, the third one is registering your designated point of contacts for the wave readiness calls. So once we get that information, we'll try to schedule some calls. So making sure that they're available is going to be important as well. And then finally, just providing us with any missing DEM files that we go ahead and request from you. So that covers kind of the next steps here. And so now this brings us to the support and contact. And so kind of reading off here, we are your single point of contact for the migration. Everything related to questions, technical issues, pre-migration prep, vendor escalation, it all goes to one place, which is our shared program email of the EMSA support at emsa.ca.gov. And so we ask that you go ahead and use it. Go ahead and reach out to us if you have any questions, any concerns, any potential escalations. This is also where we will go ahead and receive your LEMSA information template once you've filled it out. And just kind of continue to coordinate and send out meeting invites for the duration of your migration. And so I think, yep, that brings us now to our Q&A section. But again, before we get started, I did want to just once again thank the people that have joined the call here today. I think with any migration, and Liz touched on this, there is some level of anxiety, but there's also excitement because of everything that's coming with this new system. And so just want to say that we really look forward to partnering with you in the next few weeks, months to make this program a success and everything beyond that, because I know there's work to be done. And so I'm not sure if questions have been coming in. Let me actually go ahead and look at the chat here, see if we have any questions so far. Jeffrey, we have one question, and also open for folks to come off the mic here and just raise your hand, and we're happy to answer any questions that you may have. So I'm looking at Jeffrey's question and just reading it out loud here. So will we still be integrating with ImageTrend? Question mark, collecting system of care data through the system or the current implementation? Is biospatial still in play? Question mark, if there is any additional cost to the LEMSA for the secondary pipeline for this integration, does the EMSA assist us with the cost? So I think 3 different questions here. Will we still be integrating with ImageTrend? Well, this depends. It's for the receiving side of things, you will no longer be integrating with ImageTrend, the current system, after August 30th. But from a collection standpoint, Jeffrey, can I ask, who is your current collection system?
Our current, we have different providers, have different vendors. So we've got TraumaSoft, we've got ImageTrend, we've got Zoll, we've got a smattering of different systems in the county. So right now I'm just asking if we're still gonna, if at the end of this is the linkage with ImageTrend, is that gonna go away? we currently report system of care data to image trend, and this may be more of an EMSA question than a you question, but are we going to still be reporting that through the forms and information that, or is that going to be handled by this integration? I'm just wondering if this changes any of that.
Hey, Dr. Garzon.
I don't, let me see if I can understand the question and help here, at least from the EMSA side. So the current upload to ChemSys that's made either by LEMSAs or by EMS providers, depending on how the LEMSA has set it up, goes to ImageTrend because ImageTrend has been the current contractor. But what this process is, right, is our EMSA is not renewing the contract with the current provider because we're bringing the data in-house. We're going to store it on the cloud and have a vendor to do that. So now I'm not sure exactly if you're speaking because many LEMSAs use ImageTrend or ESO or something else to house their local EMS data repository.
Yeah, that's not the question. The question is that we currently report specialty care data through an integration with ImageTrend. And I'm just wondering if we're going to continue that. The other people are asking the same question in the chat, but are we going to continue doing specialty care data through the reporting that we're doing currently through ImageTrend? Is that going to continue, or is your contract with ImageTrend to collect data also include that? And is that going to change this reporting mechanism that's going to affect other people in my agency? So I just want to make sure I understand.
Yeah, it does, and it will, right? We're bringing the specialty care data in-house as well.
Understood.
I see that we have a couple questions as well on the chat, in addition to the Q&A chat. They're two separate ones. So let me go ahead and move over here. Will we have access to? Let me actually start from the top. So, when do you plan to provide the integration accounts to each LEMSA using the multi-agency model? Creation of these accounts at the LEMSA level will take some time to build. That is correct. And so during the wave readiness calls, we will confirm your submission model approach, and then turn around, depending on the approach, and start to coordinate with your vendor, with us provision and creating the credentials and us providing those to you. So that once your migration window starts, we're able to kickstart each pipeline. Mark Roberts, does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you. Just keeping in mind that there's a pretty big lag time to get some of these things done when we're trying to coordinate with our vendors.
Noted. And yeah, we are keeping that in mind. I think that's why one of the reasons why we want to give this opportunity to aggregate if possible as our recommendation. But I know that not everyone wants to pursue that option. And so, yes, the moment that we determine that you will pursue the multi-pipeline approach or the as is, then we'll go ahead and start provisioning and creating those accounts. And so does this include specialty care data? Dr. Garzon answered that. Will EMSFlow follow the current CA? Sorry,
Can I interrupt for a moment?
Mm-hmm.
Just wanted a little bit more clarity on that response. Dr. Garzon, you said that, we will be integrating specialty care data in-house, but in this EMSFlow, are we doing specialty care data as well, or is that something that's going to be rolled out later? Or is this just EPCR data that we're discussing now?
I can answer that, but I see that Dr. Garzon just came off mute.
I was going to ask you to answer that, so go right ahead.
Yeah, so yes, for this, it does not include specialty care data. That is for a later phase.
Okay, so we'll continue our same processes for that until another time. Thank you.
That's correct.
Sorry, I do have one question related to that. So if we're going to be only transitioning the EMS data during this migration phase, what will happen after August 30th with the specialty center data that is being transmitted to the state currently?
Ashrith, I think you and the program team are a little bit more aligned on that. You mind?
Yes. We are currently working on a revised timeline for the specialty care data, and we will be reaching out to the LEMSAs on a broader strategy on the rollout of that platform and how we are gonna start onboarding the hospital users and LEMSA users for the specialty care portal separately. So we hope to have that up and running before August 30th, and we'll be reaching out to LEMSAs to kind of coordinate on that as well.
And Sarah, I think the other question that you had was around, will EMSFlow follow the current CA schematron with the same validation rules that was released May 1st? That is correct. We are using the latest files.
Great, thank you.
For option A, for the integration account, are we still able to provide a separate DEM file for each provider, or do our vendors have to create a one big DEM file that contains info for all our providers, worried about the duplicate data and fields?
So we are piloting right now with Napa and Santa Clara with this approach, and our our idea is that still be able to provide separate DEM files, and then we'll be able to accept that. But that we are piloting right now to test and validate the approach, and before we schedule the wave readiness calls, we'll be publishing periodic updates on how that is kind of going along as well.
Jason?
I guess when you were discussing the aggregated model, one of the advantages that you noted was that we would have greater insight into the traffic that was flowing through that single pipeline. I was wondering if you could say a bit more about how the EMSFlow side is set up and how it would provide us with that greater level of insight versus why the multiple pipeline model would not provide the same level of insight.
Yeah, so I can take a stab at it and then have our team also chime in here. But currently with some of the multi-pipelines, the data coming back, any errors or any issues, go back through via that pipeline. And so if it's aggregated, then in this case, it would first flow through the LEMSAs, and then it would be essentially a contact from you, from the LEMSAs to the providers on any issues that they encounter. And so then having one pipeline here essentially aggregates everything before it being sent out to the state.
Jason, I think you will still have the same level of visibility. It's the fact that, operationally, long term, it's easier to kind of manage from a multiple accounts and multiple pipelines perspective.
Gotcha. I think I'm in Orange County, and I think we might run a bit of a hybrid right now where we are aggregating as a repository all of our providers, but yet we're still sending out very much like one of your diagrams laid out, where the flow from the providers goes into us as the LEMSA, and then it goes from us as the LEMSA to you, but through individualized pipelines. Yeah, so
gotcha.
I believe I've heard past comments where some LEMSAs are submitting data directly from a provider directly to ChemSys. But others like us, I think, are serving as a repository, receiving data from each provider, but then still sending it to you via a unique channel that's a one-to-one for each of our providers. So if we were to continue that, we would still hold the responsibility, but maintain the insight as to the failures. But like you just mentioned, we would maintain that additional responsibility of maintaining each one of those pipelines as opposed to a single pipeline. Is that correct?
That's correct. But Ashwin, I'm gonna go ahead and let you.
Yeah, that's right, Jason.
Okay.
Yeah, Jason, in your case, and ultimately, I take back my comment. You essentially have the same level of insight and visibility into the data coming in, but it comes down to the credential management side.
And by credential management, you're referring to passwords and tokens and things like that that are required to set up the integration accounts. Is that correct, or is there other credentials?
That's right. Just
okay.
And this is Ricky from LA. And follow up on that one on failures. If you have the single pipeline, would it isolate the single provider that failed?
yes, ideally it will, and that is why we are piloting with Napa and Santa Clara to kind of test out the feasibility, and we'll provide more updates on that front.
Okay, so that's being tested.
That's correct, Richard. But we're confident that since these are single submissions, that we can point back to single errors.
Okay. Thank you.
All right, I just want to make sure that we're not skipping anyone. So we went through Sarah's comment, Willow's comment, Eric, option A for the, okay, yep, I think we answered your comment as well. Will we have access to the data on EMSFlow for the data reports with our current reports? Will our current reports be populated over the EMSFlow? And so this kind of comes back to our reporting side of things. Yep.
Sorry, I just answered. Yeah, answer that if there is any, if that makes sense, or if there is a follow-up to that, I can take that up. But right. I think we would need programs help a little bit in answering Mark and Jeffrey's question regarding the timeline for publishing the schematron, and then regarding the biospatial.
All right.
Cameron, is this something that you can take on, or we can discuss internally and get back to the respective folks on the answers for those specific questions?
Yeah, no, so regarding the schematron, I think we're going to follow like the same schedule that we have been. To believe, and my team can help me out if I'm incorrect, as I think that we were going to do it twice a year, I think, or we're going to have major updates twice a year. And so nothing is changing with the way that we are going to be doing the schematron updates. And as far as biospatial, that's something that we'll have to take back and provide an answer for that for this webinar.
Yeah, this is Hernando. If I can add in about the biospatial, I mean, we have a contract with them to send the ChemSys data. So and while we still have that contract, that data will still go to biospatial. This another upload that we have to work out on our back end. But we have been evaluating, I mean, in the future planning, we're hoping to do that geolocation kind of work that biospatial does as well, and bring that internally to do that for ourselves. So with the long term, what happens with that contract is still up in the air.
And I think, Cameron, there is another question from Martin or Jeffrey Martin regarding the cost and assets from LEMSA. Is that something we should revert back on, or?
Yeah, I think I'm not for certain, but I think that's something that we can take back. But I don't believe that there would be any increased costs for the providers. But again, I don't want to speak out of turn. So yeah, that's something else that we'll take back.
Most of the providers, require a cost for installation and flow of data in a secondary pipeline from the vendor. So I'm just asking if, we have multiple, agencies in our county and multiple systems, and they're going to incur a cost for this integration. How long does the integration need to stay up in a dual pipeline model? And if so, is there, if that's going to be an extended period of time, is there a relief that we can take back to the agencies?
Jeffrey, do you mind reminding us what your LEMSA is?
Contra Costa County.
Contra Costa.
Yeah, we're in wave 4.
Yeah, so we anticipate, I know that the question that you pose isn't exclusively just for Contra Costa. You bring up a great point. This may be with some vendors that may request an additional cost here for adding another pipeline. But essentially, we wouldn't be looking at no more than, even with the earliest wave, no more than 3 months for having this dual pipeline up.
Okay, I
Because
think
then we would
11
be
days is
converting to
pretty
one.
optimistic to try and get them to create that linkage as well. But we'll keep our fingers crossed. And I guess the last question I had was, and this is probably for EMSA as well, is the newly rolled out APOD adjudication system, is that going to be tied into this data set, or is that staying with ChemSys until it gets rolled into this? How's that going to work?
I can have Adam go ahead and answer that question.
Yeah, thanks for the question. So the APA audit tool is currently pulling from our current ChemSys vendor and will continue to do so until the formal transition to this new EMSFlow system.
Okay.
We do not expect there to be any disruption. Of course, we are planning for the worst and hoping for the best. But along those lines, the data with the dual pipeline model, we shouldn't be seeing any duplicate records coming into the system. Again, with our testing and rollout with some of the largest software vendors in the state, we should be getting all the kinks out of the system in this testing and pilot phase prior to starting waves 2 through 6 in the very, very short coming months.
Thanks for answering my questions.
And Jeffrey, I'm just thinking about your question here, if there's any additional costs for the LEMSAs to have the secondary pipeline. Can I think as a part of engaging with your vendors and starting conversations early, can we go ahead and not just for Jeffrey, but for others, just engage with your vendors to see the feasibility of a secondary pipeline here, and if this is something that's being flagged? Because in this case, I know we have about like 12 vendors who EPCR vendors here, and so if you can flag this and then bring it, raise it to us, that way we can consolidate any issues like this and try to, resolve it before the migration window starts.
Was that for me, or that's for the vendors you have on the call?
I think that's for the LEMSAs as you're engaging, including yourself, Jeffrey, as you engage with the vendors, just reaching out to us if in this case there is an additional cost component here, just for us to figure out what on the EMSA side what this looks like as well for us.
Okay. I'll start floating that around. Thank you.
Any other questions from the group? I think I just seen the chat. EMSA has been issuing schematron files with no defined schedule. I'm asking EMSA to commit to 45 days in advance so allow time for our vendor to publish. Okay. I think Mark Roberts, I think your comment is kind of more towards our EMSA team on the kind of updates and the timing and the communication around those.
Yeah. So again, going kind of back to the schematron updates, and again, that's something that we've worked on with the LEMSAs is committing to the two major schematron updates and the two minor ones, and that's sort of supposed to help mitigate some of the issues around with the amount of time needed to implement them, and that's something that we have received feedback on. And then so this way of doing it with two major, two minor is something that we've sort of instituted, I think relatively recently, and so that's going to be our approach moving forward to ensure that people have enough time to implement them.
Mark, any other follow-ups just to make sure that we're closing the loop?
Yeah, it's not about the number of schematrons, it's about the time in advance to get them deployed. Sending them out a week in advance or whatever is not long enough. It's 4 times a year, 45 days in advance. That way we have plenty of time to review it, get it to our vendor, and get it implemented.
Noted,
Yeah,
Mark.
no, I hear you, Mark, and again, that's something that again, the approach with this schematron update is trying to kind of alleviate. So we'll obviously take a look at much time we can give in advance, but this is, you know, the approach that we're taking right now to help alleviate that.
And one of the other questions that we have is Eric here. Is EMS provider move to NEMSIS version 3.5.1? Will there need to be considerations, additional steps from the LEMSAs? Nope. And EMSFlow team, correct me if I'm wrong. There's not, everything continues as is. We expect those submissions to come rolling in, and we'll go ahead and populate your DEM file here into the, as you're sending it for the current system, we'll also try to also reference it so we can load it and preload it into the EMSFlow system as well. So nothing changes there. Just continue to submit those when ready. All right. Well, that covers all the questions I think that we've reviewed here. If anyone has any questions that we didn't answer, that we accidentally skipped, I'm encouraging you guys to raise your hand now. Okay. Well, with that being said, again, just want to thank everyone for your time, for your questions. And we genuinely look forward to partnering with you in the next few weeks, months to make sure that the EMSFlow program is a success. So thank you for your time, and we'll be in contact soon. Have a great day, everyone. Thanks.
Thank you.
Everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.